Hey friends, David Paulides, CanAm Missing Project, and that is Huck, the executive producer of the show. How are you, Huck? You've been a good girl today, huh? Yeah. Saying hi to all your folks up there, friends. Oh, you're a good girl. Oh, you're a good girl. Oh, you're a good girl. You're a good pup. Oh, that's a big yawn. That's a big yawn. All right, folks. We're going to get into it. We've got two very interesting and very timely cases today. And before we get into the cases, got a letter from a viewer here that I think is interesting. I'll read it to you. Hey, dear Mr. Paulides, if you have a minute, I'd like you to share an event that I'll never forget, and I think you might find particularly interesting. Around 9:30 one night in Novato, California, I heard a very loud, low-pitched boom outside, and I thought something really heavy had fallen over the backyard. When I slid the window all the way open, I heard another boom. With that one, I could tell it was coming from the sky and sounded huge. Oh, bless you. Bless you. Looking up, all I could see was a dark gray fog or low cloud covering the night sky. I put my ear right up to the screen and I heard these very strange noises, unlike any that I had ever heard before. They made an odd series of low-pitched swooshes, with every other one being higher in pitch, forming a cycle with a kind of an irregular timing, following a slight pause and ending with a boom. After listening to it intensely a few more times, I tried to categorize the sound in my mind. But this was something very peculiar, and I remember thinking at the time that it didn't fit anything that anyone from this planet could call familiar. The only familiar part of it was that I could tell something big was struggling to rotate around like a car's engine trying to turn over on a low battery, then resulting in a backfire like an old Model T, only this car seemed to be the size of a Walmart store. I couldn't tell what direction it was coming from as it seemed to fill the whole sky. Wah-woo, wah, wah-woo, wah, pause, boom. The cycle of unworldly swooshes and booms repeated for only a minute or so. Then just like I thought it might, it started to rotate and rotate again and again, increasing in speed over 4 or 5 seconds until blending smooth and fading out. But before I could say, wow, there was a thunderous roar, and I swear it sounded exactly like the Millennium Falcon when its engines blasted out of Mos Eisley spaceport. Only then, as it was leaving, could I tell where it was. It gained altitude while banking left and headed towards San Francisco. That's when I said, wow. My brother was there and he must have heard it real well from his room. He was so weirded out by it that he went outside with a shotgun ready to meet the invaders with force. A couple of days later, he said he talked to someone who heard it from the other side of town. I'm telling you all this because if something like that is able to roam our skies undetected, or at least unchallenged and unreported, then it makes perfect sense to me that people might just disappear without a trace. Obviously, there's a lot more going on than we're being told. It could be that they allow it in exchange for technology, or perhaps they're powerless to stop it and can't warn us without causing extreme panic. But that seems unlikely since Yosemite still remains open to the public. Thank you for your time and watch your show often and appreciate the work you do. That's fascinating to me. So people know I live out in the boonies in the woods. And since I've lived here, I've seen more strange things in the sky than I can ever tell you. And it's not that I wasn't looking before. I've always been looking. But the more I do the research on Montana, the more I find out that Montana has a lot of weird stuff in its skies. And why that is, I don't know. But I can tell you that between myself and Joe Hauser over at the Montana Vortex, we see a lot of weird stuff. Now, is that my consciousness activating something in the sky that turns on and allows me to see it? I don't know. I do believe that our consciousness plays a role in what we see and what we don't see, and why we see it and others don't. Just saying. All right. The second case today was sent to me by about 20 people. But the first case, nobody said a word about. And there, in my mind, they are related. First case involves a young man named Sebastian Sales. There's Sebastian. 21 years old, missing February 27th this year, 2025 at 11:30 at night. He lived with his family, mom, dad, and two other brothers in a town called Naughton, UK. And he was a student at the University of West England. There's a great picture of Sebastian and the pet dog. Looked like maybe a golden retriever. So he's a dog lover. Gotta enjoy that. Well, on February 27th, Sebastian went to meet friends 3 miles from his house in a city called Chippenham, Wiltshire. His parents and his family said numerous times they are really tight, close group. I love that part. Not enough families are close-knit. Well, he went into the city, met some friends. At 11:30 that night, he left the pub. The place was called the Black Horse Pub in Chippenham. Black Horse Pub. Well, he was caught on CCTV walking south towards his home in Naughton. At one point, the police say he deviates and walks along the Lover's Walk adjacent to the river. There's also talk that he was walking along the Avon Valley Walk, and it's also believed he possibly walked towards the Bowden Hill area. This is the River Avon. This is the Black Horse Pub that he was at. The best guess is this is the route he took. And then right here, he deviates and he goes along the Lover's Walk. Now, he's caught on CCTV at these various locations. The quickest route to go home would be if he went this way and then went south. Now, the next morning, he doesn't come home. This is a picture of him walking en route from the pub to his house. White Adidas shoes, blue jeans, and a coat. Now, this is not in his character at all. But the police get notified by the family he doesn't return. They get on it immediately and they start searching. And the UK police, they must have protocol for this that they're not talking about, because there have been so many people that have disappeared just like Sebastian. Go to a pub at night, leave the pub, probably been drinking, walk near a river, disappear. Well, the police always think, well, he must be in the river, right? Well, there's cameras along the route. Police immediately put divers in the River Avon. They start searching. And late in the day, on March 1st, they find a body. But here's the weird thing. It wasn't a body of Sebastian. They described the body as a retiree, 70 years old. They refused to name who he was. They said that his family was notified, and then nothing else about the case. No name, no cause of death. Was he drinking downtown? Nothing. But that is the weirdest coincidence I've heard in a while. You're searching for one young man, and then you find an old man in the same river you're searching. I think that's odd. So, the police said that the disappearance of Sebastian is completely out of character for the type of person he is. Makes sense to me. And then on March 2nd, they continue to search the river, and there's nothing. And the police talked to the press, and the press put out headlines. This is the headline: Mystery over hunt for 21-year-old student. Mystery. Detectives walked the route that they believe that Sebastian walked. Divers continued in the river. They asked people that had been driving that route. A lot of the people in Europe have car cameras. Check your car camera, see if you see somebody walking. Nobody did. Searchers walked that river shoulder to shoulder. I haven't seen that in the States, but I'm sure it happens, but I haven't seen it. That was pretty impressive. That was a lot of searchers in that river. And they brought in dog units on March 11th. I'm sure they were canine cadaver dogs to search the banks, see if they picked up a scent coming out of the river. And then they brought in a private group. This is a similar group that has had major success finding people in the past. It's called the Specialist Group International. And I'm not sure if the family asked them to come in or the police did, but they did. Search for several days. They found nothing. So Sebastian disappeared on the 27th, notified the 28th that he was missing, and they searched all the way to the 12th and the 13th. That's a long search under any circumstance, almost 2 weeks. The CCTV footage showed Sebastian walking normally, not like he was drunk. Here's the weird thing about it. In this case, the police never mentioned anything about his cell phone data. Where did his cell phone ping? Where did it not ping? What direction did it show? Nothing. And that's not normal, folks. And I don't know why the police aren't saying anything, but it bothers me a lot. Now, on a grand scale, this is where Sebastian disappeared at the bar. Right where he makes this turn right here is where he walks next to the river at Lover's Walk. The route he would have taken home would have been just about this way. Now, they're saying it's about 3 miles. I have it pegged at about 2.5. Not a long walk for a young man. He could have done it. But this is kind of rural out here. Don't know if he made it out here. I don't know why he didn't take an Uber. Maybe save a little money. He was in good shape. He could do it. But that's the route that he disappeared on. Now, this is not a normal case, folks. He should have been found, according to everything I know on these cases, and I wrote a whole book about him called Missing 411: A Sobering Coincidence. He should have been found in the river. Why isn't he in the river? Somebody keeping him confined? Somebody wants something out of him? If anybody has seen Sebastian, I know I have a lot of people out there in the UK watching. If you're living in that Naughton area or Wiltshire, Chippenham, Rowden Hill, Bowden Hill, Avon Valley. If you've seen Sebastian, call the police. And I have mega ultra compassion for his family. Remember what I told you at the beginning of this? I had about 20 emails about the case I'm going to talk to you about now. Nobody sent me an email about the case I just talked to you about. And the real mystery is the one I just talked to you about, because the next case happened about 3 hours after Sebastian disappeared and just 25 miles away. Young man's name was Louis Provesana, 26 years old, missing February 28th, early a.m. He was a bartender. His sister is famous, Ljubljana Provesana. She was an Olympic champion in Paris in judo, competing in the 67 kilogram category. She was originally competing for the UK, switched over, fought for Austria, and she won, beating the UK competitor that she left. I think that's kind of ironic. So Louis' sister lives in Austria. Louis was described as super sociable, friendly, easygoing, everyone liked, nice guy. He had a partner named Lauren Bowler. Lauren Bowler. Okay. Here's the story. 2:55 a.m. 3 hours and 25 minutes after Sebastian disappeared, Louis is last seen by friends leaving the Jam Jar Bar and Pub on Little Ann Street in St. Jude, getting in an Uber that he had called. 4 minutes later, only been in the Uber for a few minutes, Louis calls Lauren. Didn't get her on the phone, but left what was described as a disturbing voicemail. And then on the voicemail, he's heard telling the Uber driver he wants out of the car. So he just got in the car, quickly dials her number, and then wants out of the car. Then, 3 minutes later, at 3:03 a.m., he makes an emergency call to the police lasting 34 seconds. Police try to call him back. Apparently he said nothing. Police try to call him back, there's no answer. Police text him and ask him if he's okay, and there's no answer. And then they try to triangulate and determine where the phone was at. A minute later, a member of the public calls the police and says that they're worried about a man at Junction 2 and M32. Police went to the scene, nobody was there. Now, police later said that they never knew if the member of the public was calling about Louis or somebody else because they could never find anybody. And they never said what the member of the public was concerned about in watching this individual. 3:15 a.m. till 3:30 a.m. CCTV footage shows Louis at multiple locations at the Eastgate Retail Park. Last confirmed sighting was the back of the Tesco Extra car park. This is important. So he's downtown Bristol, UK, at the bar, at the Jam Jar. 1.8 miles. I'm guessing in that 3 minutes in the Uber, he made it this far and was asked to get out here. Here's the car park. IKEA's right here. And he's seen in this area on CCTV. Now, he's caught on CCTV in the slot, and then he's seen doing something near a bush. And then he's seen walking away from the bush. At 07:37 a.m., 7:37 a.m., Lewis hadn't come home, and he was reported missing to the police by Lauren. Couldn't raise him on the phone. Nothing. Noon that same day, police tracked down the Uber driver, interviewed him, cleared him. And then Detective Inspector Walker said 100 police were involved in the search, including police in Somerset and Avon. And then they started to put people into the river looking for him. The next day, a friend of Lewis's got involved in the search, and he had a phone tracking app. And he tracked Lewis's phone to that same bush I told you about in the car lot. And the phone, a bag, and Lewis's wallet were stuffed behind the bush in the parking lot. They went back and looked at the footage again and said, yeah, it looks like he is ditching something in that bush. About this time, his sister, Ljubljana, had heard about the disappearance and flew from Austria into the UK to participate in the search. Everybody stated that Lewis's behavior was completely abnormal. He was just a mellow guy, got along with everybody. Nothing about this made any sense to anyone. Now, on the 1st, police had searchers in that river everywhere. And they thought he was going to be somewhere because he wasn't on land. They had put drones up, they had searched the area on foot, they had canines. On March 2nd, they continued the land, river, divers, drone searches. Detectives interviewed family and friends, associates, the jam bar. They weren't getting anywhere. Everybody said he was normal. The Uber driver couldn't explain why he wanted out so quick. But something was obviously wrong, because he left a disturbing call for his girlfriend. Then he only stays in the Uber for a couple of minutes. Then he gets out of the Uber and he's seen ditching all of his stuff in a bush. Why would you do that? I don't know. March 3rd. The police dive team was searching the River Frome in the area where he ditched his bag and his phone. It was in an area named Napier Road, right in that same area, in Eastville, Bristol. They're in the river and they find a body. Initially, they refused to identify the body. Everybody had been in that area searching for 3 days. Once again, this is the car park. This little sliver of the river right here. It's not a big portion, but that's what they're searching, and that's where they found his body, right adjacent to that. I don't get it. I never do get these cases, but this time I really don't get it. Never showed any mental illness. Nobody could figure out what was going on. Following day, March 4th, the sister releases a post on social media that Lewis has been found deceased. She made a very stern statement that Lewis did not commit suicide. Several days later, the coroner came back and stated that the autopsy was unexplained. Oh, what? Unexplained? I've heard unknown cause, but unexplained. Friends, do you know how many times these cases are just like this? Now, I know initially I'd be thinking, well, is it possible he was given some GHB? Well, the activity level that he was exhibiting at the time he put down his items in the bush doesn't match a GHB intoxication. I really can't explain him hiding the things in the bush and then running across the parking lot. Running from what? Why separate yourself from the one thing that may save you, your phone? I don't know. Now, I've told you before that all these cases fit this specific profile of the 2 cases within 3.5 hours I just told you about. Yeah, 3.5 hours and 25 miles. That's correct. Now, this is where Lewis disappeared in Bristol. This is where Sebastian disappeared in Chippenham. Now, point to point, 25 miles. Direct. Do you think this is just a coincidence? So, the FBI profiles cases. And they profile cases because they're looking for suspects. Well, the profile I'm going to lay out for you has been going on for decades in multiple countries and far parts of the world. Not just one part of the world. Far parts of the world. Now, first of all, time of the disappearance. Well, Sebastian's case, he's leaving the bar at 11:30. Sometime after that, he disappears. Lewis, he's seen at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and then he disappears. Time frame's pretty close. What activities were the people doing before they disappeared? Well, I can't say that they were drinking because I don't know. But we can say that they were in a pub, right? Can we say that there's a likelihood they were drinking? I think that's safe to say. Now, what were they doing exactly before the last time they were seen? Walking alone, running alone. What was their location? Both near a river. Age 21 and 25. The most common ages of this group of people that disappear, normally it's probably between 19 and 35. It's almost always healthy young males. Almost always. Marital status, both were single. Nationality, both were Caucasian. Days missing. Sebastian's still missing. It's almost 40 days now. By the time you see this, maybe 45 days. The point being, he wasn't in that river when they were searching. And if he was in the river, his body would have come up by now. But in Lewis's case, they didn't find him the first couple days. Does that mean he wasn't in that river? No, but my guess is going to be he wasn't. Distance between locations, 25 miles. That's a cluster zone in our world, folks. That's right, cluster zone. Both people disappeared when nobody had eyes on them. Do you realize how strange that is? Nobody ever sees these people go in the river. Nobody ever sees what happens when they disappear. How can that be? They were not with anybody when they disappeared. One was separated from their phone, Lewis. Sebastian, they're not saying anything about the phone. And I know he has a phone because there were pictures online of him taking a selfie with his phone. So why are the police not saying anything about the phone? I hope the parents know about the phone, and I hope they're pushing the police to find out where it's pinging from. So were there any witnesses to this event? No. No witnesses. Well, Dave, how can that be? Exactly. So here's the questions. So first of all, there's the profile of both the cases. I just gave them to you. Question number 1. Why would Lewis hide his wallet, phone, and a bag in a bush in a parking lot? And then run from that location? Your phone is your lifeline for help, right? What is it about the phone that he was afraid of? What is it about his wallet that he didn't want with him? And why would he run from that area? Because in the CCTV footage, police said that they could see nobody else around him anywhere. Was he seeing images, mirages, ghosts? I'm just saying, I don't know. And then the $1 million question. Question that still hasn't been answered when I made this video is, what killed Lewis? We may never know. And had both Lewis and Sebastian been drinking? I don't know. They didn't release Lewis's blood alcohol level with the statement that his autopsy was unexplained. Very strange. Very strange. And then, did Lewis have GHB in his system? Well, they didn't release the composition of his blood alcohol or his drugs in his system. So we don't know. But remember, in the vast majority of cases around the world, coroners don't test for GHB. I know that's stupidity, and something has to happen to get that to change, but it's a dollars and cents issue. The more drugs you test for, the more money it's going to cost to do the testing. Now, it bothers me a lot that we're hearing everything about Lewis's case and hearing nothing about Sebastian's case. It tends to really tick me off. And in a lot of the articles about Lewis, the headlines are, Olympic athlete found deceased in water. He wasn't an Olympic athlete. It was his sister that was the athlete. Not taking anything away from Lewis. Sounds like he was a stellar individual, but don't lie about it. Realistically, his sister needs to push the government real hard and make a public spectacle about this to figure out what was the cause of death, what was the composition of his urine. Urine tells it what alcohol and drugs were in your system. Because your blood takes those things out of your system much quicker than the urine. And force disclosure by the coroner as to the cause of death. This isn't an if, and, or but. This needs to be done because it'll contribute to the overall understanding of what's happening in these cases. Now, of all the cases, of all the countries in the world, the UK and the US are 1-2 on the number of these cases. The UK is probably ahead at this point because of the numbers just in the last couple of years. If there's parents out there, please listen carefully. If you have a student that's going to college and there's a river or a lake anywhere near that school, do not let your student walk home alone late at night, ever. Especially if it's a male athlete or male, any in decent shape. Don't. Too many times, these unexplained disappearances happen. I wish I could be more blunt, but it's not joking around material. I don't even like giving these presentations anymore because they hit too close to home for me. And I feel for the families. Mr. and Mrs. Sales, I feel for you. But you need to be the advocate for your son. You're not here to make friends with the people in the government. They are not your friends. You need to push them very hard to get answers and to find your son. They need to do search warrants on your son's phone and find out where that phone was last pinged at. Was it shut off or did it run out of batteries? And you need to find what was searched on data-wise on that phone in the previous 24 hours. That's your right. You deserve that. And you push the police for those answers, and if they won't do it, you step it up and you go to your local political representative for your area and you push them for help. That's the only way we're going to figure this out. Remember, I push kindness all the time. But you know what? When it's your son or daughter, you have a right to those answers. They are no longer on this earth. Especially in Lewis's case, he is no longer here. Let's pray that Sebastian's still alive, but we got to find him. And as a parent, there's no better advocate than you. So, in those instances, I set aside the kindness. Be nice, be polite, but you got to get answers. In the meantime, for you and me and everybody else on this round planet going through the universe, be kind to one another. Kindness is free. And if you can't find it, you exude it yourself. I appreciate each of you being here greatly. And remember, we're in the final days of the Kickstarter campaign for Missing 411 National Parks. Thank you for everybody that contributed. You guys are outstanding. Thank you. Paulides out.